Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. Today, instead of doing our regularly scheduled TTRPG talk, we are going to be doing Let's Write an Adventure for a second time this week. Mainly because, frankly, I think we're getting some good stuff, and I'm getting a little obsessive about wanting to make some progress on this adventure. So I'm RJ Kerr. I'm your host. And as always, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on building out our ongoing campaign in real time. So you can see all of the thought process and all of the, warts and all, as they say, that goes into creating a D&D campaign in, well, in fully rendered, theoretically publishable detail. So last time, and that would be Monday of this week, uh, we started off with, or we should say, we finished off working on some of the brainstorming for our go. We were thinking of clues and things like that that we could use to get our players from um, their encounter in our need section, where they are kidnapped and have to escape their captors and discover the existence of this artifact somewhere out in the wide world that they could give them the means to escape this domain of dread. And we had spent a little bit of time working on what that artifact is and where it might be found. And then we were trying to think of some brainstorming, some ideas on how we get them from that point A to point B, right? By giving them as much agency as possible. And so we were talking about using effectively the five node structure, commonly used for mysteries in TTRPG settings, but it works just as well for any sort of discovery focused event. And so we were building that out last time. So this time, let's see what we want to work on today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I should mention that we're going to be uh, working on, we're going to be doing a little shorter episode today. Normally, our TTRPG talks are about 30 minutes or so, and so we're going to be doing about 30 minutes of work on this just to fit into that same time slot instead of the hour that we do on Mondays for this. So let's go ahead and pick up. Um, we talked about some clues last time, and so you know, we took a minute and we were just kind of doing a brain dump of all the possible, um, you know, sort of clue categories that we could think of that would get our characters from this place of I've escaped my kidnappers. I know that there's this artifact that exists that I need to find, and that will let me escape this domain of dread in which I have become trapped. Um, all the way to I have found the artifact. Huzzah! Um, and then we'll talk about what comes after that later. Uh, but we're working on kind of a multi-layered node structure for that. And so we spent some time thinking of things like there's always lost tomes with lore clues in it. There's always, uh, chalk and tales that we could rely on. Things from like sea stories from sailors, that kind of deal. We talked about maybe coming up with some sea shanties or a sea shanty that pops up over and over again in this adventure from the very beginning. Since this domain of dread takes place in and around an inland sea, um, and that we could have some clues layered in there, or a clue layered in there. Um, we talked about intercepted communications from faction members searching for the artifact, and we have two major factions that are competing for it. We've got one that's led by an aboleth and one that's led by a slod. We've talked about folklore and old stories, word of mouth, so just rumors effectively, archaeological clues in terms of like physical things that the characters could maybe find and uncover that would lead them in this direction. Tool proficiency clues like straight up analysis that the characters could do if they have the right tool proficiencies, things like soil samples and what have you. Um, and then we also talked about the idea that maybe somebody has found the artifact before. and we could have a guide clue, somebody who had a good reason to leave the artifact behind, and didn't decided that they couldn't accept it themselves, and so now they know where it is, and they might be reluctant to share that information with anybody else, um, or they could know where it was last seen, and they might be reluctant to share that information with anybody else. Um, that's kind of a Hail Mary clue. That's a big one. And it's one that I kind of like and I kind of would like to include in this adventure, but the same token, it should be, I think it probably needs to be outside of our general structure. Um, if we're kind of going with the outline that we discussed effectively, and this is hard to sort of conceptualize in Notion, it's easier if it's like if there's a graphic representation and I just don't have a good graphic for it. Um, but effectively, we've got a first lead that our characters are going to find, um, and that they can follow. And from there, they'll learn. They'll have the ability to find three clues, and each of those clues will lead to a secondary scene, or a secondary investigation scene. Um, and each of those secondary scenes will also have three clues that will lead to each other and to a tertiary scene, which will each have three clues that will lead to each other and a tertiary scene. And so we're creating this matrix of clues, right? And there's a lot of redundancy in here. There's a lot of double up, because we don't want to end up in a situation where the characters miss something because they got a bad die roll or what have you, and now they're stuck. Now they can't move forward, and we have to come up with some, uh, you know, Deus Ex Machina sort of situation where the solution is revealed to them just as they need it, because that isn't satisfying for anybody. So, um, so let's take a little time and start thinking about what are the first set of clues that we might layer in here. Um, what are things that we could have our characters, um, what could what could they bite on first? What's going to get them to this primary scene, and what is this primary scene? So they've come out of, they've escaped their kidnappers. They've got some modest gear that they've collected. They've kind of hobbled together. Um, they're poorly provisioned. They have the knowledge of this artifact, and they know that that's kind of what they need to head towards to escape. So, how are they going to come across their first lead on where to go? Um, Obviously, it should be pretty early on in this adventure, something that they can kind of head towards to start. Um, but we should think about what that moment's going to be. Is it a moment in a tavern potentially? Is it um, you know is it a treasure hunter that they run into, that is maybe looking for this artifact themselves as well, and might have information on it? Um, if we want to come up with just one scene for this, one potential scene, then it should probably be something that we can float, something that we can move about as we go. And if you have your own thoughts on this, by the way, this is an interactive thing, so please feel free to toss your ideas into the chat. If you have your own thoughts, comments, questions as we build this out, the more collaborative we make this, the cooler stuff we come up with as part of this adventure. So let's see. The idea of there being a somebody else who's looking for this. Um, we already know that there are other factions that are looking for it. Um, uh, let's see here. Jonathan Frost says there's also the Church of the Deity of Law. I think I can't remember if you detailed that yet. Yeah, we spent a little bit of time, I think, building some of that out. Where we have our deities of hope and despair. Um, and yeah, we worked on those a little bit. They're an option as well. How are you thinking that those might relate to the clues? Or were you thinking that we should jump back and build out some of those before we start working on clues? Because there's probably something there, some help that they can get. The tricky bit, from my point of view, is going to be, let's see here. Jonathan was saying, I was thinking more along the lines of that it looks like a safe haven. Yeah, yes, they might. You're right. They might try to go to ground somewhere, and so that's an excellent point. If we're trying to anticipate actions of where our characters might go, we could come up with a primary investigative scene, one that leads this information, that leads kind of gives them this information that there are these initial clues that they need to get started with. It would be one that we could fit into an area of respite, an area of rest and relief, place where they could go to kind of recuperate and restock themselves. So maybe it starts with a story. Maybe we start with some of those rumor clues and some of the word of mouth clues, and that we can kind of fit into, and we can kind of set up a scene that we could fit into a number of locations, depending on where they go and where they try to go to ground. Whether they try to go to one of the shrines, or whether they go to a tavern, or whether they go to one of the shops to get outfitted or any of that kind of stuff. And let's see here. Jonathan says the priest could point them towards the failed treasure hunter. Yeah, they could. Pointer characters could be useful here as well, kind of guiding them along. And we may use some of those in here. What if we? What if we took this in a couple of directions at once? What if we, because we need a couple different clues here, right? Things that they can sink their teeth into, and that give them some choice on routes to follow and where they might want to go. So what if we start with, one is one's like a storyteller, right? Telling old stories, old myths, that kind of thing. Because that sort of thing could happen in a tavern. It could happen on the street corner. It could happen. You could have somebody on the steps up to one of the church telling these stories for coins, that kind of deal. If they go to a place that's like one of the churches. So it's an easy character to fit in wherever. So we could have a storyteller telling old tales of storyteller telling old tales of the artifacts lost, and so they can get some rumors from there. I like your idea of the pointer character, Jonathan. And we could have pointer character, perhaps a priest who directs the characters to a I'm going to change this to pointer NPC just so I don't confuse myself here. NPC who directs the characters to a failed treasure hunter. um, with a lead. That could be one. Um, let's see. And for a third, yeah, because I'm trying to think of stuff that we can kind of plunk down wherever the characters go, because we don't want to end up in a situation where we craft this really cool scene, but it requires that they go to a specific place and then they never go there. I have certainly made that like mistake before, where I've built out some just epically cool stuff, or at least I thought was epically cool stuff, and and then the characters go everywhere but the place that I wanted them to go, um, and it all was for naught. Um, so let's come up with a third thing that that could go wherever we might need it here. Let's see. I like it's gonna require a little extra work, but I like the sea shanty. It's subtle. It's something we could have worked in. It's a sea shanty they could have heard, in the initial tavern where they get kidnapped. They could hear it in all kinds of places. Um, and let's hear a sea shanty about the loss of the artifact. It's going to require us to write a sea shanty, which is a little extra work, but I think it's a cool detail that we could kind of uh, that we can build on. Um, and who knows? Maybe we'll use something like ChatGPT to help us get the basis of it down. We'll figure that out. It doesn't have to be very long. In fact, we probably don't want it to be very long because we don't want. Um, I'm gonna change this because we don't want the the GM to have to sing this long song and have the characters kind of doze off while they're going through this ballad. Probably only want it to be a stanza or two, um, just to kind of give the flavor of a song and impart the important information. Um, so let's see here. Ooh, what else? That's good for that. So to that end, those clues need to lead to our secondary scenes. So this needs to go to, we're just going to arbitrarily say B1, B2, and B3. And these will be places where the characters can go follow on the leads, which means they're going to have to learn unique things between the storyteller, which is also going to require us to write a little bit of a story, and the sea shanty, um, which no, those are distinct enough. That's fine. I was in my brain for a minute there. I was going, "Ooh, are those too similar of a kind of clue? And it's just not going to feel as good." But no, I think those are distinct enough, and they're the kinds of things that would easily be stumbled upon, that that are would feel a little more natural for our characters to come across, and stuff we could pepper in early on too, to help us kind of flesh out gaps in the character's knowledge as they go. Um, but that means that our story for the storyteller needs to lead somewhere. Our sea shanty needs to lead somewhere else. And the easiest one of these to deal with is our treasure hunter. So what we can do is say B2 and we'll say treasure hunter interview. We could say the characters must Interview a treasure hunter. We'll put failed hunter who is also looking for the artifact. I like that one because I think it makes for a hostile interview. Because our characters need the information, but one, they don't want to give away that they're also looking for it necessarily because this treasure hunter is not going to want competition. And two, if they do give that away, then there's going to have to be like a quid pro quo kind of deal. The treasure hunter is going to want something for the information. Um, and it gives us an opportunity for them to have a bunch of other clues. They would certainly know what was in the story and the sea shanty and all that kind of stuff. So we have a clue that goes to B1, a clue that goes to B3, and we'll say a clue that goes to C1 from there. Okay, that's a good start. Let's see. Let's back up a little bit and let's talk about what kind of information about this would the story could the characters get from the storyteller and from the sea shanty. The storyteller, I feel like we could do something to the effect of, um, if the characters were to ask where they learned this story, where they heard of it, that kind of deal, they could point them to, to some repository of knowledge somewhere that they can do some research on this artifact. And which for this sort of shanty town that we're in, I don't think it makes sense for there to be like a big library or like a college of mages and bards, anything along those lines. But there is likely somebody who has, collected some of the histories, and it might be worthwhile creating out something like that they could send them to. So let's say store historical deep dive. Let's see here. Characters must navigate their way through a collection of old tomes and say elderly wisdoms to find essential clues about the artifact. Because I think of at this point like an old salt, right? Like the idea that you've got somebody that has been living in this place and has heard all these stories and knows all the old stories and all the remembers all the old shipwrecks and all the old storms and all that kind of stuff from from the area here, and that has collected old charts and manifests and maps and tomes and what have you, and it's kind of hoarded this up, and is probably an eccentric kind of character that the players might have to, or the characters, the PCs would have to go and talk to and kind of dig through the various layers of just almost hoarder levels of just old paperwork and odds and ends, and have to listen to endless old stories and kind of try to keep this old coot on track as their mind wanders in various directions as the characters are trying to pull out useful information. Um, so maybe that's kind of the vibe for this one here, because I can imagine the role play that would go into that, where you put this eccentric old salt into into play, and you get to role play them as just the craziest old repository of knowledge, and just let your characters just kind of go nuts, kind of working that through, and then we can make a variety of clues that are accessible through various skill checks as they come up, between persuasion, trying to keep this guy on track, maybe arcana or history to kind of dig through the old paperwork and kind of trundle through and find useful information. So let's dig some of that. Let's say, and we're not going to worry about DCs just yet, but we're going to say history check to sift through old tomes, manifests, and diaries. And that would come up with a clue, which will be to be determined, but will lead to somewhere else in here. We'll figure out where it leads. Persuasion check to keep the old coot on track while being interviewed about the artifacts whereabouts. That would lead somewhere else. So, what if? And I know we're getting close to our time here, so we'll have to wrap up at some point here soon. But, um, what if one of the things that can be found here, and maybe it's a perception check, is an old sketch uh, that shows this our old coot and our treasure hunter together, because of course our treasure hunter has met this guy. They've gone through, he's clearly gone over there to try to get information out of him before, and so that might be the clue that leads them to go talk to this other treasure hunter that we have here, or talk to the treasure hunter, because I don't imagine this particular old salt here was terribly interested in finding the artifact for themselves. So maybe we've got that. So perception check to spot an image of the old salt with the treasure hunter, indicating that they know each other. That would lead to B2. And that also tells us that we can use that as our clue that leads to B1 for B2 here. Excellent. Because those can lead back and forth. And it would make sense that they might each have a copy of that image or something along the lines. Um, whether it's a piece of scrimshaw or something like that that's a little more permanent, or maybe it's just a sketch. Who's to say? We can decide that later. But excellent. All right, cool. So with our kind of 30-minute sprint session here, we have already hammered out a bunch of potential clues here and started to build out the narrative on our mystery and our search here. A lot of work done in a very short amount of time, especially kind of working from scratch here. So thank you everybody for jumping in and joining me for this today. I always have a lot of fun when I get to chat with you all while we work on this adventure. Remember, we are doing these every Monday as well, and then on Mondays we do an hour-long session to work through this and build out our domain of dread. So come check me out and check us out again this coming Monday. So that'd be the 10th of February if you're watching this in real time. And of course, if you have enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that kind of stuff kind of helps the channel and frankly helps encourage me to keep doing this kind of stuff. So just love to have you here and love to build this community. So thank you so much, and I will see you again next week. Bye.